Hey, what's up, everybody? Happy Wednesday. Happy hump day. Wanted to say a quick thank you to all of you who sent me some happy birthday wishes over the past few days. I sincerely appreciate that. There were hundreds of them from all different forms of social media, different platforms. And I tried to respond to each and every one of them. If I missed a few of them out there, I sincerely apologize. But wanted to say thanks. It's nice to know I was being thought about. And it was nice to kind of unplug for a few days. Me and my fiance, we went out to the beach, to the coast, and 90% unplugged, I would say. I checked my email and stuff a little bit, maybe 10%, but for the most part, I just unplugged and got away for a few days, and that was very nice. But back on the grid and back to boxing, right? So we had a card last night in Vegas, another one of these top ranked cards. And in the main event, the right man won. The right man won. There was a minor upset. Mike Plania over Joshua Greer Jr., who is undefeated coming into that fight. But there was, of course, a bad scorecard. Dave Moretti had it a draw, 94-94, which is crazy because if you think about it, there were two knockdowns, right? Greer was dropped in the first and the sixth. That would mean he had 6 rounds for Greer, which is just not the fight anybody saw. The other two judges scored the fight correctly. Even if you had it a draw in terms of rounds, which is nearly impossible, then the two knockdowns would make the difference. So I just got to thinking about this with judges, with referees, and all commission officials. It's not just judges and referees. There are supervisors. There are other roles you can serve in these commissions, particularly the powerful commissions like Nevada, California, even New York these days. Texas is a powerful commission because there's so many fights there now, and there are others. But some of these judges, man, some of these referees have been around for decades. So I just wanted to give you guys just a few numbers just to think about, okay? And we can have this conversation. And I don't want this to be a video where I just bitch about bad scorecards or bitch about bad refereeing. There's enough of that shit, really. There's a million tweets. You guys all saw them last night when those scorecards were read in that main event. I don't want to do that. I just want to give some numbers for you guys to consider and show just how systemic this is, and then ask some questions, and then maybe we can possibly get to some, at least, ideas for solutions. And one of them that has been suggested in the past is term limits. When you think of politicians here in the United States, our president has term limits. They can serve 2 terms and that's it. And I think that's good. But if you look at the rest of our political system in Congress, whether it's in the House or the Senate, or even at the state and local level, like on city councils and stuff like that, a lot of the jurisdictions that we have, there's no term limits. So you have like career, lifelong politicians. Some of the biggest names politically in our country right now are people that have served for 40, 50 years in some cases. So these are people that live 100% off of taxpayer dollars, and their life is just making sure that they get reelected. So it's not necessarily about passing bills that make any good change or anything that's productive. It's about saying the right things on social media or on cable news or whatever it is to make your constituents happy and to get reelected. That's all these people want to do. So you start to think about motives. If you're a career politician, again, are you really serving the people? Are you really interested in doing the right thing? Or are you interested in doing the thing that keeps you in the job, right? Now, I say that and I bring up that example not to get political, but to show how that might influence the way you do your job and to carry that over to the discussion here in boxing with these commission officials. How many of these guys, particularly in a commission like Nevada, which is the most powerful commission on earth, right? And not just boxing, but MMA, everything else. It's the most powerful commission on earth. How might this influence the way some of these judges, some of these referees are doing their job? Because it's not necessarily about doing the right thing right there in that moment. It's about doing the thing that might secure your employment later on. How does that affect the scoring for fighters like Canelo Alvarez? Before him, Floyd Mayweather. Before him, Oscar De La Hoya. And on it goes. How does that influence the way judges score fights, referees handle fights, the way supervisors and executive directors of these commissions handle certain situations when it comes to things going on behind the scenes. You look at the Mayweather-Pacquiao fight, some of the things that were going on there. You look at some issues around Canelo Alvarez in recent years. We could go on and on with this. So it does, I think, affect the way superstars are treated in these commissions, but also it trickles down. We saw last night, Dave Moretti had a scorecard that just was off the reservation. Nobody agreed with that scorecard. And this was to benefit a prospect, not a superstar, a prospect, right? So this trickles all the way down. Okay, it's not just affecting the superstars, but sticking with Dave Moretti, I'm just going to go over some numbers here. Okay, Dave Moretti debuted, his first scorecard was in 1977. I wasn't even born yet. My old ass just turned 41. Okay, I wasn't even born yet the first time this dude scored a professional boxing match. 1977. He will turn 76 years old in August. So he's 75. He's about to turn 76. Lou Moret is another one. Okay, and by the way, I should stop right here before I go any further and say, because hashtag 2020, we have to preface everything. I'm not trying to be ageist here, if that's even a word, discriminatory against people of a certain age group. I'm not trying to single out any one judge or ref or official and put them on blast, because there are instances, most of these people have done a very good job collectively over the bulk of their careers, but job performance does start to slip at a certain point. And this is universal across the board in most industries, not just being a boxing judge or referee. But look, this is a difficult conversation to have. We all have relatives and family members in these age groups that we want to be treated with respect and dignity. So I want to make sure that we keep it civil, everybody. But it's a conversation we need to have. Anyway, Lou Moret, debut in 1982. 1982. Turned 76 in August. A lot of these guys have birthdays in August, I discovered as I did this research. Dwayne Ford debuted in 1986. He is 82 years old. Now, he hasn't scored a fight, I think, since 2018, I do believe. Or maybe it might go back before. That might be like the mid-2010s. But he is now a supervisor in the commission. So he is still working at a very important level in the Nevada Commission. I believe it's Nevada, Dwayne Ford. And he's 82. 82 years old, dude. Okay, think about this. Burt Clemens debuted in 1989, scored well into his late 60s. It has been a couple years. I think with him, the last fight he scored was 2018. Correct me if I'm wrong on any of this stuff, guys. I just threw this together really, really quickly. Stanley Christodoulou debuted in 1974. Okay, 1974. Age 74, scored as recently as last year. I know he scored fights in 2019. Jerry Roth, you guys probably all remember his name, scored late into his 70s. Guido Cavalieri is 67 years old. Joseph Pasquale debuted in 1985. Larry Hazard Jr. debuted in 1990. That's 30 years, guys. Alejandro Ochin debuted in 1992. Glenn Feldman, 92. Live Martinez, 1993. Glenn Trowbridge, 1994. And Adelaide Byrd debuted the year I graduated high school, 1997. So these, I could read off 100 names here, okay? But these are just some names that most of you guys will definitely recognize. I wanted to stick with those names that you guys know. Think about this, though. All of these guys, some of them debuted in the 1970s, several of them in the 80s, most of them in the 90s. None of these guys have debuted in the last 20 years. So at what point should you reach a limit with scoring fights? Now, keep in mind, some of these guys, I don't want to hold anyone back from making a living, from getting paid. I don't want to force anyone to retire, but at what point? Is it 10 years? Is it 20 years? Should you be given your golden watch, so to speak? I don't even know if that term is applicable anymore. I don't know if people get golden watches anymore. But you guys know what I'm saying by that. At what point should it be like, okay, you've served your term as a judge. Now it's time to either go into another role in the commission or to move on, to retire. At what point should that take place, if at all? Should there be no term limits? For me, 20 plus, 30 plus years, I'm looking at these numbers, in some cases 40 plus years as serving as a judge. That's just too long, in my opinion. That is too long to be serving in one role like that, particularly when you're in a very powerful commission like Nevada, where the big money fights come in and you're getting paid pretty well off that stuff. Uh, I just think that it's too insular. There's too many protections and there's not enough checks and balances. I've said it a million times. The Nevada State Athletic Commission operates like a police union, which, think about what's going on in the news recently and think about the issues with the police union protecting shitty cops. Well, look at what happens in Nevada. Think of teachers' unions protecting shitty teachers. Think of what happens in Nevada, Adelaide Bird, who's been scoring fights for the last week and a half. It's crazy. And yet she debuted in 1997. She's the youngest out of all these judges I just named in terms of length on the job. Let's look at some of the top referees real quick, okay? Again, these will be names you guys know. Tony Weeks, fine referee. I think he's probably past his best years, but he debuted in 1994. He turned 64 years old in August. Kenny Bayless debuted in 1992. He's 70 years old. Robert Byrd, he's been all over the past week and a half on these top ranked cards in Vegas. Debuted in 1982, turned 78 this December. Jay Nady debuted in 1976. He turned 73 in August. Now, all these guys, so many of them have birthdays in August. John Shorley, who's the youngest. Okay, he's 59 years old. He's one of the youngest top referees out there. He debuted in 1992. So even as a young guy, he's been on that job for 28 years. I want you to think of any other industry. And it's difficult because boxing, it's part of the entertainment industry, sports industry. It's so different. It's difficult to compare it to the jobs you guys all work out there, right? You can't really make a direct comparison. But at what point, even if, let's say, you work at, I don't know, let me think of a company here. You work at Bank of America, okay? Would you be in the same job for 28 years? Or at some point, would you move on to a different role? Let's say you start as a teller at a branch. Are you going to work as a teller for 28 years, 30, 40 years? No, at some point, maybe you'll be maybe you'll work your way up to be the branch manager. Then maybe you'll go to the corporate side and work in a corporate office and be like a project manager or an operations manager, something like that. You're going to move into different roles and then maybe into like some sort of executive role, right? You're going to work your way into different roles and positions. So it might be the same company, but you're not going to be serving the same function for decade after decade. And I think that's a problem we have in boxing. So I just wanted to pose these questions to you guys with some real numbers just to think about. I mean, these are the top names I just read. Now, there are other fine young refs like Harvey Dock and guys like that who I think are doing a great job. Even Steve Willis, I think he hasn't been on a job for 20 plus years. He's an older guy, but he debuted in the 2000s. He came onto the scene. So I think he's still kind of a fresh, quote unquote, referee. I mean, should you serve as a ref first and then maybe go into scoring fights? Or should you serve as a judge first and go into reffing fights? Should you be allowed to bounce back and forth between the two like some of them do? I think Jack Reese bounces back and forth and does several different functions. Is that good? Maybe that's better. Maybe it's good that somebody like Jack Reese does all these different roles because then he's well-rounded in his skill set and knowledge base. Maybe that's the way it should be. I don't know. I just want to pose some of these questions, but I definitely think there should be term limits to some of this stuff because for a guy like Dave Moretti, and again, I'm not trying to beat up on the man, okay, I'm not, but he debuted in 1977. I wasn't even born yet. He turned 76 in August. Jay Nady debuted in 1976. He turns 73 in August. These guys have just been around in their role for too long. And it's not as if we don't have young judges and young referees out there. I talk to some of you guys. We talk all the time on Twitter. We talk on text. There's several of you guys I've become friends with around the world. I talk to several of you guys who live in different parts of the world. And you do a fine job and you're ready to move up the ladder. There are several young judges that are kind of ready to take over. And, young is a relative term. When I say young, I'm not saying in their 20s. There are guys in their 40s and 50s that are kind of ready to step in right now and take these senior leadership positions. When you think of all these names I just read off here, uh, these are the senior people right now in those roles for the most part. That generation of guys in their 40s and 50s is ready to come right in. And then the people scoring on undercards could be in their 20s and 30s. I don't think there's anything wrong with that. If they do a good job, age shouldn't be a factor. But consistently, we see some of these guys who have been around for a while giving bad performances. And when you think about a referee, there was a fight last week where Robert Byrd reacted to, I think it was the Magdaleno fight, where he responded to action a little bit too late. And Magdaleno ended up being fouled as a result of it. Now, some of it was Magdaleno's fault. He was trying to do a little bit of an acting job, wasn't protecting himself. I get it. But I think a younger, more with it referee, a guy like a Harvey Dock, would have jumped in there quicker and had more control of the fight. We've seen Robert Byrd completely lose control of fights in recent years. And we've seen guys like Kenny Bayless help out, if you will, and just be too advantageous to certain superstar fighters in recent years in some of his performances. So on and on this stuff goes. They used to call Jay Nady Jay Shady. I think of like when he was called Jay Shady, that was like in the 90s. And this dude's still around. There's other referees I could point to, even younger guys that have had issues that are still around because of family connections and such. So, anyway, I just wanted to pose this question to you guys. Could term limits, to a certain degree, help with this? Because regardless of a guy's or girl's performance as a referee or a judge, there's no protections after you serve your term limit. That's it. You've served your 10 years, time to move on to a different role. Maybe that's one way to help weed out the bad from the good, because even in like a commission like Nevada, where they protect bad judges, they protect bad referees. You guys know the names. Maybe after 10 years, that term limit's up, and it doesn't matter how much they want to protect a shitty employee. That employee's time is done. It's time for them to move on to a different role. Could it also be that a federal boxing commission here in the United States, instead of all these different state commissions that have different rules and different restrictions and regulations, if there was one federal commission instead, then there is no longer a Nevada commission. You could have fights in Nevada, but you could have a judge from different parts of the country or different parts of the world come in and work that fight, and vice versa. You could have a fight in Connecticut with a Vegas judge scoring it, and the rules and restrictions, all of that is the same. So there's uniform standards. Will that help it? I don't know. I just wanted to pose some of these questions because I saw that scorecard last night and I'm like, man, Dave Moretti's had a few in recent years that just are not very good. His name has popped up several times in recent years. He's not the only one. I'm not trying to pick on him. I mean, even in that the undercard, the fight they opened with, the Santillan DeMarco fight, he had that fight a draw. What's funny is that was, in most people's opinions, the best score of that fight, because the other two judges, who are much younger, Tim Cheatham and Steve Eisfeld, they had it 96-94 for Santillan. A lot of people out there felt that DeMarco won the fight. The one thing I'll say about that fight, it was close. That was a close fight, okay? I felt DeMarco edged it, but it was close. But if you look at the main event fight between Plania and Greer, that was a clear win for Plania. That was not a close. I mean, it was competitive, and Greer had a good push down the stretch when Plania got tired to tighten up the scorecards. But man, after about 8 rounds or so, I mean, that was definitely a domination by Plania. But the last couple rounds when he tired out, yeah, I get it. It kind of evened up the scores, but it was so obvious who won that fight. For Moretti to have it a draw, which means he had Greer winning in terms of rounds, that's like not even a logical scorecard. That's like I said before, it's off the reservation. So, and he's had cards like that in recent years, man. So anyway, it just got me thinking about this. I wanted to come and pose some of these questions to you guys. The Neutral Corner is back next Monday, so I'll see you guys then. All right. In the meantime, enjoy the fights tomorrow night, Thursday, that other top ranked card, and yeah, have a good weekend. I'll see you at the fights.